My dad was killed in a crash in Oak Forest. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He was on his way home from my sister's house when he was killed on his motorcycle because someone just wasn't paying attention. If it wasn't for an irresponsible driver, my dad would still be here today. I want everyone to realize that's not just a motorcycle, that's someone's everything. Please drive and ride responsibly. It really is a matter of life and death. Learn more at lifeordeathillinois.com.
Mully and Hall, live and local. Chicago sports talk for your morning on 670 The Score.
Timing that I saw between both those quarterbacks, Nick and Mitch, looked good. Where there's going to be some times where there's going to be mistakes, and they're working through what we want to do here in this offense and trying to be perfect with that. Specifically, with Nick today, I thought his feet were good. I thought his timing was good. But again, we're evaluating and watching these guys at the same time. And I thought that Mitch too, we've talked about, he's growing as well as a quarterback. So both those guys, the room has been great. They're really helping each other out. I told y'all it's going to be a healthy competition. And so far they're proving me right.
3-2 on Nico Horner. And the pitch. Line towards center field. Garcia comes in, makes the catch. And the ball game is over. Garcia almost came in too far, had to make a jump to catch that ball in center, but it's all over. The Brewers come back to win 3 straight, and they win the series 3 out of 4. The final today, Brewers 6, Cubs 5.
This one popped up. Anderson comes in. Moncada takes it, and the Sox win 7-2. They salvage the finale. Jason was particularly good the last inning.
Mully and Haw, Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. Yes, indeed, the Bears are in pads today. The Cubs are at a little bit of a crossroads, just 3 consecutive losses. They've only lost 6 games all year, so losing 3 in a row is a downside, even if they're all one-run games, but you have the hated, lousy, rotten, no good St. Louis Cardinals in town. So I think there's going to be, it's going to be a little bit difficult for some fans if things don't go well. But look, I mean, here you go. You got the first of the 2 doubleheaders, and you got 5 games in 3 days, so you can be really healthy in a hurry here.
Good opportunity for the Cubs. Yes, they can bounce back immediately against the dreaded Cardinals. And we heard Pat Hughes call that last out. What an out that was. Nico Horner, 13 pitches against Josh Hader. That was a really good at bat, the kind of at bat the Cubs, frankly, didn't have enough of over the weekend when they lose 3 of 4 to the Brewers. Yeah, there's a lot going on right now, Mully. We have both baseball teams kind of fighting for playoff spots. They look headed to the postseason. We've got the Bears with their first padded practice in the quarterback competition, in air quotes, because we don't know if that's a real thing or not. Got the Blackhawks playing tomorrow night, 9:30 for their survival. And then, the big news over the weekend that broke while we were on the air Friday at the end of our show, Jim Boylan has punched out for the last time at the Advocate Center. The Bulls be looking for a new coach. We talked to Arturas Karnisovas at 8:30. What kind of coach is the ideal coach for this Bulls team? Does it have to be a guy with experience because you don't want 3 guys doing their jobs for the first time? Do you got a young guy who can develop with the players? What do you think? What are they looking for in their next coach?
Well, I think I'll go back and quote Archie Bunker, who once said,
No.
Spread love everywhere you go. Let no one ever come to you without leaving happier. That was either Bunker or Mother Teresa. I always get them confused.
You worried me there for a second.
I think I'm just having a laugh. I think they need someone who can make everyone around them happier. And I don't mean that in a sense of, bringing a smile to their face, a wisecracker. I mean, when are you most satisfied as a professional athlete? When you are playing your best. So they need, above all else, player development at this point, because they have some guys that you think might be some pretty good players, but there are flaws in their games. And you got to figure out a way to get your really good offensive players to be able to play really good on both ends. And, we know that we've seen guys like Zach score a ton of points and do well in a horse game, but you worry about whether he can defend anyone. And how are you going to get your two best players in the same backcourt, your two best scorers, if they can't defend anyone? So it's about making this team more well-rounded and trying to create a better, happier player by making them a better, happier human.
That's an interesting idea, and I wonder about this, and I often wonder about this when it comes to the vague term, and I think it is vague, player development, because it can be defined so many different ways. And when you talk about keeping the player happier, I know what you mean. It's almost like a state of mind. It's like a mentality that you take to every day of improvement or every day of the grind that a season represents. And I wonder how much mentally Jim Boylen just wore down this core, and how much being around him, he was the guy who, as passionate as he was about his job and as much as he loved being the head coach of the Chicago Bulls, once he said something to you, you wonder how often players turned around and rolled their eyes and kind of tuned him out eventually over time. And I think we saw that. So does the next guy, is it more important from a technical perspective that he knows how to put Lauri Markkanen in the right spot on the floor to succeed, or Zach LaVine, or whoever it may be? Or is it technical, or is it psychological? Do you need somebody that is the feel-good guy, the guy that is the pat you on the back and keep a positive atmosphere and create that environment that is conducive to improving and winning?
Yeah, I think it has to do with the confidence that you have as a player. When I think of just, my limited athletic career, and when I was at my best and at my happiest, you're always at your happiest when you're at your best. And you're always at your best when you have a coach that can reach you, that can motivate you in some fashion, that can make you feel confident in what you're doing. And I think that when you look around the NBA, it is a players' league, and you have to be able to relate to and get the most out of players. I don't know, I don't want to sit here and claim that Jim Boylen was a taskmaker. I don't think that's true. I think he cared. I just don't know that it connected in the same way with players that you really kind of have to have. And so now, this is going to be an awful comment to make because it's going to be misconstrued, but I think you need a more normal kind of head coach, somebody that can do their job in a really good way and affect change within a player, but do it in a more kind of normal basketball way than kind of Jim Boylen, who's, and again, I'm not taking
conventional
shots. Yes.
Conventional.
That's
he was bizarre but never boring, and I think that was part of the problem, is that we were, as a sports media collectively, we were sort of always watching and waiting for him to say something or do something that was unorthodox. You don't want that to be what you leave as your legacy as a coach. Passion can only carry somebody so far in any profession. At some point, it's got to be obvious why you're here and what you're doing. And nobody ever doubted how badly Jim Boylen wanted to succeed as an NBA head coach, but he gave us daily a reason to wonder if he could. And I think that's what you want to avoid. You want it to be more obvious, whether it's Kenny Atkinson or Wes Unseld Jr. or Ime Udoka, whoever it may be as the next head coach. Just make it obvious why you're hired and what brought you to Chicago. Because with Jim Boylen, after the first week on the job, you wondered how long this mistake was going to last.
You didn't mention Adrian Griffin. I find that fascinating because he was sort of the candidate du jour back when AK first took this job. The thinking was, here's a guy he played with in college. They had a long-time friendship. This would be the perfect kind of guy. And now I know that his ex-wife has cast aspersions upon him and talked about him being abusive, which is going to set off tons of red flags and concern, and perhaps end the possibility of him coming aboard here in Chicago. I just, he was pretty vehement about those accusations being incorrect and not being the truth. And I don't know that if the accusation alone is out there that you move on and try somebody else. And I don't know how serious he was as a candidate, but certainly that would give everyone great pause. You wouldn't want that to kind of hamper the first huge decision that your decision maker makes. So I wonder if just an accusation at this point, and again, there never been any charges, but would that accusation stop him as a candidate?
Well, it's not fair, perhaps, but it is the way things tend to work. And he did issue a statement through the Raptors, and he denied being involved. And he mentioned the longstanding legal dispute over alimony and child support. And you have to wait to see what is the next move in this. If you are embarking on a coaching search, I do think it would be naive to ignore that. Again, it's not fair necessarily, but it is the world we live in. And if you hire Adrian Griffin in the midst of this dispute and in the midst of these, unseemly headlines and maybe unwarranted, but we don't know that yet. And unfortunately, that's something the Bulls have to consider when they're moving on and when they're looking at the credentials for the next head coach. And it just is bad timing for everybody. And you hope that it is not a case where, Adrian Griffin was a guy who had a really strong reputation while he was in town as a former Bull. But I don't know if it certainly doesn't help his candidacy. And if you're being realistic, it probably does hurt it.
312-644-6767. Let's try Aaron. Aaron is listening online. Good morning, Aaron.
Aaron.
Hey, good morning, guys, and thanks for taking my call. I listen to you guys a lot. So hear me out. I think that bringing in a head coach is very important, but I believe it's also the system. And the Bulls organization have been lost in the wilderness behind Paxson and Furman. And now they have a new president of operations. I believe it's AK. And I think that when you have players and they come into an organization like the Lakers, like New England, and the system starts with ownership down, I believe that players come in and the one thing they all have in common is they want to win a championship. The Bulls organization, we talk about, well, Kobe White is out of position. He shouldn't be playing point guard. But what happened to putting the best 5 players on the court? Regardless of the position, the best 5 players on the court. So, yes, we do need a head coach, but I think it starts with the fact that we changed the operations part, getting rid of or moving Paxson to the side, getting rid of the other gentlemen, and now we have an organization that maybe young men would want to come in and play for the team and look at the history of what Michael has left with Phil. And Jerry Krause, so let's give him credit. He made the moves. But Reinsdorf and them stayed with Paxson for way too long. Not enough good talent wanted to stay, and they never developed the talent they had.
Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron.
Fair points. I think if you look back at Jim Boylan, all the things that we said about his personality remain true. He also had an offense that limited, I felt like, the development and growth of Lauri Markkanen. You can't ignore that. So it's all related: technical, psychological, the entire package. You got to find a guy who offers everything in terms of an upgrade in every department.
312-644-6767 is the number. Do you like the names of these candidates? Is there someone that jumps out at you? We'll discuss it next. Mully and Hall on The Score.
Again, I took my time for a reason. It was a process, and I took, to make that decision over the last few months since I was hired in April. I had no timeline. This was the right time to make this change, and that's what I did.
Mully and Hall, Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. That is Arturas Karnisovas discussing the removal of Jim Boylan, and we will get a chance to talk to him in just a little bit. I don't want to celebrate someone losing their gig, but it does make you feel like anything is possible, doesn't it, David? It does kind of give you this idea that there's a new man in charge, and it kind of underscores the difference in what's happening with the Bulls right now.
It completes the circle. You could not have gone into next season seriously expecting people to believe in the change that began when you removed John Paxson and Gar Forman from their jobs and you have a new front office. You could not get people to believe that it was complete until you removed Jim Boylan. That just is because of the way that he coached this team and what firing him represents, and that is a complete and total reset. And that's welcome news for Bulls fans. And you don't, obviously there's the human aspect to it, but you celebrate the fact that the Bulls have been responsive to what's going on there. And Michael Reinsdorf has seen what you have seen as a Bulls fan and is as fed up as you feel. So that's the good news. The question now is, what are they looking for in the next head coach, and how will it fit into the structure in that you have a new executive vice president, you've got a new general manager. Can you hire a head coach without experience? That's the question that I have for AK, and I'm curious to see how he answers it.
Yeah, it's funny because we have some texters checking in, and there seems to be a lot of support for Mark Jackson, and I can understand why. I mean, he did a great job of kind of turning the culture with Golden State, and then Steve Kerr comes in and they start winning championships. And I think that there are different people like that around professional sports, where it's almost as if the experience of having one person leads to the success that eventually occurs, even if they get no credit for it. So I can understand why people want that. I think the idea of like a culture change within the team is important when you're making a change, and that's one of the reasons you had to kind of respond to the Jim Boylan era.
Yeah, Jim Boylan was brought here for a culture change from Fred Hoiberg. He created a culture shock, though. That was not what you wanted, and not what you seek in a new head coach. And Mully, I think you're right. But you also have to keep in mind, when you're looking big picture at the Bulls in terms of the future, you've got to hire a head coach that free agents in that great class that's ahead, with the space that you're going to have, that free agents will come to Chicago or want to come here to play for that guy, or can look at him and not consider him a deterrent. Or when you're making a list of pros and cons in the cons file, you want that to be a pro. So you want to hire somebody who will appeal to potential free agents as well as mesh with the core that you have, because you have a core that I believe still has some talent and has fallen far short of their potential, but it just takes the right guy to unlock it.
Yeah, I'm going to be very interested to talk to Arturas Karnisovas about that core, and about, they've got a draft pick coming up as well. And if ever there was a sort of potential competitive advantage, it has got to be a year where you didn't get the completion of a season, where you didn't get a chance to kind of monitor and see players perform in the NCAA tournament, where you didn't get a chance to sort of see some of the international guys in the same way that you usually would. There is a lack of information about this upcoming draft class. I think we all know who the names are, but there's a lack of information regarding that is either going to be a big advantage or a disadvantage, depending on where you're at. And we're hoping here in Chicago it'll be an advantage.
And you'd like to get a guy drafting again where you will be drafting. It probably will be number 7. You know it's going to be number 7. But you figure you want a guy, ideally, that has an impact the way that Kobe White had an impact, and the way that Wendell Carter had an impact. I mean, you should be done with this phase after this year. You should be done with the draft lottery and having to decide which executive you send to represent the Bulls. And you should start thinking about playoffs, because the clock restarts. It restarted when you made the changes in the front office, and it continues. And now it's who is going to be the next head coach, and how quickly can you return to the playoffs?
And AK is sending himself, I believe, right? Don't we have that information already?
Yes, he is going. He's making the trip himself.
I'm going to ask him that question. It's on my list. I wonder. I don't know. You tell me.
I think it's because he is the new man in charge, and he wants to leave no ambiguity there. And you want to make a statement about, this is the new Bulls regime, and I am front and center at every function to represent this franchise in the best way possible. And this is the way things are going to be done from now on. It is through me, and that's why I'm here.
Is it possible that he might change his mind at the last second and he wants to be able to pull that trigger? I'm kidding.
I don't know.
I love the idea, though. I want that option.
We're
going to talk.
What's his lucky charm? What's his souvenir?
Yeah,
What's he going to bring to bring him luck?
We'll have to ask him. All right, we'll bring him in next. We'll get a chance to talk to the new head decision maker, and we'll do that next. Arturas Karnisovas joins us next. Mully and Haw on The Score. Mully and Haw, Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. We're delighted to welcome in the Bulls chief decision maker, Arturas Karnisovas, joins us on the Al Piemonte Ford hotline. Al Piemonte Ford in Melrose Park. Good morning, Arturas. How are you?
Hello, Arturas.
Good morning, Mike. Good morning, Dave. Good morning, Chicago.
Well, it's great to catch up with you. Really appreciate you jumping on. And got to say, you really have gone about doing what you said you were going to do. It took 4 months of evaluation. You weren't doing anything knee-jerk. You did a lot of research. Obviously, now comes part two. Jim Boylen is gone, and we can get into that a little bit. But now comes the new hire. Do you imagine taking as much time? Do you have any idea what kind of time frame you're working on? How will you go about it?
So I don't have a specific timeline. Our staff is generating a list and candidates, and we will start, exploring those options over the next several weeks. So no timeline.
In terms of the process, Arturas, when you go back, let's go back to last week. When did you know your mind was made up, and how did you inform Jim that he was being replaced, and how would you characterize his reaction to that?
So as I've said, I made a basketball decision in the context of what will be the best for the future of the Chicago Bulls. It was actually 5 months, not 4, so the time flies. This is a person's livelihood, so I took the responsibility, seriously with respect to the weight it carries. I said from the beginning that as I moved into this role during this unprecedented time, I would take my time to make the necessary evaluations. Made a decision now because I felt like I had all the information I needed. I'm not a person who dwells on the past, and so as an organization, we're looking forward to the future of this franchise.
I don't know if you've been following any of the stories that have been written or the rumors that float around, but there was this idea that while you had complete autonomy when hired, that something had somehow changed, and the Bulls wanted to hang on to Jim Boylen for financial reasons in order to not pay out a contract, anything like that. And there was almost a panic within the fan base that you weren't going to be able to make your basketball decision, that it would come down to a financial decision. And I think that it was almost, as weird as it sounds, important for everyone to know that you have the autonomy to make the decision that you wanted to make, and it was a basketball decision.
Well, yes. I mean, to the credit of our ownership, I was given the green light to restructure this team from the top down. Part of the reason I believe I was hired was because we have shared vision for what this team can and should be. Fortunately, the Reinsdorfs have put their faith in me to implement an organizational model that I believe can be a framework for success. So personally, I had a precise vision of the people who needed to be in place to execute that. So,
Arturas, how much did you weigh player input in the decision to change coaches? And now that you're looking for your next head coach, will you consult the same players before doing so?
I speak with the players regularly, but I won't disclose what we discuss. These guys are professionals. At the end of the day, they want to play and they want to win games. It's my job to put them in the best position to do that by surrounding them with the best coaching and developmental talent available. They understand that is what I'm trying to do. overall, they have been supportive and welcoming to me since I took the job in April.
You know, most executives come into a job and they have like their own list in their mind of people that they admire, that they want to work with, that sort of thing. How deep does your list run? And can you tell us? You talk about the way you envision this job. Can you tell us what the qualities are that you're looking for?
Well, the process is kind of like, a lot of background, and a lot of you look at criteria that you're looking for, and you find candidates that fit that criteria. I don't want to get too much into specifics, but our main focus, as we have said before, is player development. Our core is young, and we wanted to be attentive to that. That said, we still have expectations of competing at a high level this season and moving forward.
Arturas, if you believe that this Bulls job, the open job, and this has been matter of some debate nationally, I guess, if you believe it's an elite job and maybe the best one open at the moment in the NBA, what makes it so in your eyes?
I think Chicago is a basketball market and great sports town, Besides that, the Bulls are a franchise committed to being a winning organization. And I think, this restructuring, presents that. So.
You obviously are operating on a lot of different levels. The coach thing is out there. We understand that there isn't going to be an opportunity to have like a so-called, 8-team bubble in Chicago or somewhere else where the teams that didn't get a chance to go to Orlando get to work against each other and potentially help improve. How are you going to handle the idea of getting this team better when potentially you'll go a very long time without playing a competitive game?
For sure. It's a huge disadvantage for this team, but we're doing our best right now. We have, AC Center open for players that want to come in and work individually, and still waiting for something from the league, hopefully coming sooner rather than later, that we can do something more. Again, these conversations are still ongoing, and hopefully we'll get something soon.
Arturas, how much will the fact that you and your general manager, Mark Eversley, are doing your jobs both for the first time in these specific roles, what effect will that have, if any, on whether or not you seek a coach that has head coaching experience?
Well, there's going to be both, and we're going to find out in the process, who's available and do they fit our criteria. If I've been in a situation where I had to, hire a coach in the past, so it's not a new situation for me.
It's a new situation for everyone to be evaluating the talent available in a draft without seeing them in the most competitive of situations, without getting an NCAA tournament or a completion of a season. A lot of the conference tournaments obviously were called off before they got going and or just got going. And I'm just curious, when you look at what is in front of you in terms of a draft decision, is it more difficult or is it a better opportunity? In other words, do you look at this as a chance to create a competitive advantage by knowing what you're looking for in a player, or does it just make everything a little bit more confusing and difficult?
Well, I think the league is now working on the structure of a combine, we used to interviewing players, which we actually have done on Zoom calls. Then there's a medical piece, which, you got to get physicals done. And then the testing, which is, vertical, wingspan, all that stuff. So they trying to figure it out how they're going to do it this year. And to tell you the truth, I've in the past was a proponent of doing a combine and just shutting down all the workouts, because a lot of times, you watch the workouts that are like 3-on-3 and, you watch those guys all year long playing 5-on-5, and that's exactly what you need to look at. But it gives you time now to do the background and do the interviews, and I think we're going to have a good list of players in the position that we're going to be drafting.
In looking for the next head coach, Arturas, how important is it that that guy has a shared past with either you or Mark Eversley, or is it just natural to assume that he will just because that's the way it works in the coaching fraternity?
I think it's going to be natural. During this process, we're going to find out about all the candidates. And we're going to choose the best option out there.
When we talk about all the things that are in front for the Bulls, obviously players, and that's the most important thing. And so you talk about player development. There's not a lot of, we got a lot of players here in Chicago under contract. There's not a lot of hard decisions to make. Are there, do you have to keep from itching to make a change, or is it even difficult knowing what the reality is of different contracts and the amount of change you can make?
Well, the great thing is that when I came and took the job, I actually, went through the roster, and I liked what I saw. I've met those guys. I've spoken to them numerous times, and I feel that the core of this team is great. And by adding another pick, and we're going to look at free agency. We're going to have one or two other players. I think it's a good situation right now we're in, and those guys are dying to get back to work and to play again. So I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't know when the 2021 season will start, but we're looking forward to it.
What stood out about the conversations you've had with your players? I know you're it's building relationships is very important to you. Did you learn anything about them you didn't know in terms of their personality, or maybe assumptions you had about one guy over another? Can you generalize what you learned from talking to your roster?
Well, when I came in, my approach was like to get to know them personally, so I can hold them accountable, and of course, I didn't know those guys personally. I just heard from other people, so for me, it was number one thing to meet them, to get to know them, to find out about their families and their daily lives. And it was very restrictive. Obviously, we couldn't do that a lot. So that's why I kind of looked at the bubble and what's going on in the bubble. Those teams are bonding right now, and that's what I'm looking for in the future, to do the same with this team, to do something collectively. But again, unprecedented times do not allow that for now. So
it's fascinating to watch the bubble and to watch the way teams are playing and to watch sort of the development of different players. We've seen guys that might not have had a huge reputation that have played very well in the bubble, and we've seen other guys that other teams maybe have everything locked up and aren't playing with the same kind of competitiveness that you'd imagine. I would guess that when we get to the actual, when the games that matter count, and I believe they start now, we'll get a better feel for who these teams are. But as a talent evaluator, what's it like for you to kind of observe what's happening there? What jumps out to you?
Well, bubble is very interesting for me because it almost reminds you of some international or FIBA competition where you have 5-6 weeks to prepare. They take you to the mountains, and you're stuck there. You can't leave. You're away from families. The bonding process is going on. So that one, I'm jealous. So we're not getting this for the team. But in terms of evaluation, there was such a contrast of players and how they handled the hiatus and the isolation. Some people, some players were in their apartment with dumbbells and rubber bands, and some players had access to the gym full time. So there's a contrast there, and you see certain teams that you did not expect to play well. They really play well. So I think, it kind of has a different look, and I don't know how much stake, from that what we saw for the past 4 weeks.
Arturas, you chose to represent the Bulls in the draft lottery on Thursday night. What was behind that decision, and do you have any lucky charms for the occasion?
Well, the decision is, it's a new face. It's a new front office. So, wanted to be there. And, I don't know if I have a good luck and how much impact I can have on the lottery. The numbers are kind of like I would like to be higher in terms of chance to get to the top three, but it is what it is.
I'm sure that you will have everything mapped out, but representing the team, is there any chance that you just make it kind of a knee-jerk decision as you're sitting there?
Well, no, I'm going to have poker face, and and I have absolutely no control.
That's beautiful. Arturas, thank you so much. It's great to catch up with you. We appreciate all your insights. Really a joy to get a chance to talk to you and to know that you are at the wheel.
Thank you, Arturas.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Dave. And thank you, Chicago.
That is Arturas Karnisovas. He, of course, the chief decision maker, the man with the plan with the Chicago Bulls. And, you got to feel good about it, David. You got to feel good. Just, you listen to him speak. He has a plan. He has a vision of what he wants. Yeah. And it's just enacting it now, right?
Methodical, well thought out, deliberate maybe, but you know that he's not going to make any decision emotionally necessarily. He has thought this through, thought everything through. The Bulls are in good hands.
Yeah, no question about it. Really enjoyed getting a chance to talk to him. Fascinated by the draft lottery stuff and all the rest of it. All right, we're going to take a quick moment. 312-644-6767. It's Mully and Haw on the Score. Mully and Haw, Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. Always interesting to hear from the man in charge, be it Rocky Wirtz talking about the hockey team or AK talking about the Bulls. What do you feel you learned from it, David?
I learned that they definitely have different styles in communicating. Rocky Wirtz a lot jovial and a little bit more relaxed and loose. And certainly Arturas is going to be measured and more deliberate, and he is new here. So there's going to be that difference. But I also feel like you heard from both guys a real strong confidence in their convictions in terms of what they decide and why they decided something. In Rocky Wirtz's case, explaining the John McDonough firing, and in Arturas's case, explaining what is next for the Chicago Bulls without wanting to go into detail about Jim Boylan. Everybody understood why that change needed to be made. I think we're more interested in his vision for the future, and I feel like he has a good sense of that, and he articulated it pretty well.
Yeah, and I kind of like that there is no timetable, because I don't think there should be. You don't want to create it like an artificial timetable. I think there's going to be plenty of opportunity for whomever is hired to be able to coach this team and get them brought together for a season. We don't even know how long that's going to take. We're still starting the NBA playoffs, for God's sake. So it's he's absolutely accurate when he says that he doesn't have a timetable. I don't think he needs one.
And I think it's also interesting that stood out to me, Mully. We've heard him now on more than one occasion talk about the importance in relationship building, and he used the term bonding, and he looks at the bubble and he sees these teams bonding. And for a guy that comes across as serious and maybe rigid to some people, I think it's interesting that he values the intangible aspect of sports and basketball, and he sees that how important it is in a locker room to have that kind of chemistry. So you get the most out of the people as individuals, and maybe the human aspect, the team dynamic, and then that makes them better players. And I think that one is related to the other. And you wouldn't expect that necessarily from a guy who comes across that way, but I think he has been consistent in maybe stressing that fact of wanting to get to know these guys as men before he gets to know what they are as players.
All right. Well, listen, we want to thank everyone. Want to thank everyone for calling and texting and emailing, all the wonderful contributions we've received.
And most of all, thank you for listening.
Yeah, and stay listening, because Dan's got some special guests right at the top. It's us. We're going to get back to
Transition's
a little transition.
back, baby.
How about that? So we'll get a chance to talk things over with Dan. We want to thank our executive producer, Dustin Rhodes.
I call him the dingbat.
Oh, man. That's unfortunate. And that was, of course, Kevin Zepak.
They do some evil things to create stories and to make things sound better.
You're on fire. And Ray, bless you, Ray. Thank you for your kindness.
Thank you, Ray.
Dragged across the mud, you know.
Oh, I know. All right, we'll be right back with Dan Bernstein. It's Mully and Haw, Chicago Sports Radio 6-7 The Score.
Now that's a parking spot.
Introducing the I may have underestimated the size of my car policy with accident forgiveness from American Family Insurance. Insure carefully. Dream fearlessly. Get a quote. Find an agent. Visit amfam.com.
Optional policy features not included in base policies. Review policy for coverages and exclusions. American Family Mutual Insurance Company, SI, and its operating company, 6000 American Parkway, Madison, Wisconsin.